Here's your money briefing for Friday, July 21st. I'm J.R. Whalen for the Wall Street Journal. For many people whose first choice of travel typically is getting on a plane, they're turning to a mode of transportation they might never have considered before, taking a bus. WSJ's Ethan Steinberg joins me with more. So Ethan, how popular has bus travel become?
Well, broadly speaking, ridership on intercity buses and motor coaches is trending upward this year. And in some corners of the industry, it's booming compared to last year. So Greyhound and the discount bus service FlixBus, which together they are jointly owned by this company called Flix North America, ridership on their lines were up 63% year over year this July 4th weekend. Greyhound is the largest intercity bus carrier in the United States, so any number like that holds a lot of weight. But it isn't just Greyhound that's seeing significant increases year over year. I spoke to bus executives all over, from the Concord Coach Lines, which is a regional carrier in New England, to the luxury bus service Whalen, which is in Texas, and to another one in Florida. And they all say that their numbers are trending upward and approaching, if not exceeding, what they were seeing in 2019. Now, overall, the industry is still recovering from the pandemic, so it's not entirely there yet. And now, of course, travel everywhere is up, so this isn't unique to buses. But where we're really seeing the difference here with buses is on those holiday weekends when airports tend to get crowded and demand tends to mount. When Greyhound and FlixBus were up 63% July 4th weekend year over year, TSA data shows that air travel was up just 11%. So it's still significant, but there was a huge difference there. And so that's kind of where we see this bus rebound really coming into play.
So in terms of the substantial growth in bus travel and the popularity of bus travel, we're talking more than just the Greyhound and megabuses that we see on the highway.
But we're also talking about kind of a burgeoning sector of the bus industry, which is the luxury or high-end bus, or what the CEOs of those companies would like to have you call it, the luxury motor coach. They're trying to get away from the term bus because they see their options as kind of similar to a first-class experience on a flight. On those buses, they have attendants come around and feed you snacks and meals like if you were on a plane. And they have extra neck pillows and extra phone chargers. And it's this whole luxury high-end experience that you really don't usually associate with bus travel.
So there's an emphasis on comfort.
Absolutely, yes. And there's an emphasis on comfort and the experience overall, not just getting from point A to point B.
Okay, so why are people switching to bus travel in these large numbers?
People, once they started to experience or once they started to travel again after the pandemic, kind of their first point of contact with the travel industry was the airport and the airlines. According to analysts and kind of industry experts that I spoke to, a lot of people are switching from airlines and air travel to bus travel at the outset of their trips, and not just as a plan B when something goes wrong at the airport. That's one big reason, right? They don't want to even have the potential for their flights to get disrupted or delayed. But another big reason is also for cost. People often think about kind of the Greyhounds and the FlixBuses where you could buy a ticket for less than $100 and go, a far distance.
Now, in terms of efficiency, getting from point A to point B, how does bus travel measure up to other modes of travel?
It depends. On a long bus trip, like cross-country or going through multiple states, taking the bus, it takes a lot longer than taking the train. Sometimes there are transfers and it could be overnight or even as up to 24 hours or something like that. But for these short trips, for example, from Austin to Houston or Nashville to Charlotte, taking the bus can sometimes take the same amount of time door to door as taking a plane, because you don't have to deal often with going to the airport and going through security and waiting on lines and at the gate and then leaving the airport. It's just much more of a direct experience point to point.
Now, you mentioned a moment ago about cost. Can you go into that a bit more for us? How would a luxury bus ticket compare to an airplane ticket?
So the people I spoke to who took, anything ranging from a Greyhound to a luxury bus service said they just booked directly with the carrier because you don't have to do a lot of deal searching when you're booking a bus ticket compared to when you're planning to fly. And that's because in most cases, even with the luxury bus services, flying is more expensive or at least equal to taking the bus.
Now, you've spoken to some people who've switched from air travel to taking a bus. What was their experience like?
One person I spoke to, for example, he's 29 years old, and he traveled from Indianapolis all the way to Marietta, Georgia via bus. And he was moving in with his family and had 50 pounds of luggage with him, carrying practically his whole life, he told me. And the trip was supposed to be 14 hours. with a couple transfers. But at the second transfer, going into the last leg of the trip from Nashville to Marietta, he got off the bus along with everyone else, and he was told that the next bus that was supposed to come and pick him up would be canceled, and they couldn't get him on another one for another 13 hours. And he told me he didn't want to be stuck in the middle of cornfields with his luggage and his whole life packed on him. So instead, he ordered an Uber, and it cost him $250.
So wait, he was in a cornfield?
Practically. So he was kind of in the middle of nowhere. He didn't know anyone. He didn't have a lot of money on him. He hadn't slept in about 24 hours, he tells me. And so obviously, kind of like we were talking about earlier, any type of disruption, whether it's cancellation or a delay that could happen in an airport, you could also see that on the ground and on the road, even on the side of a highway. Now, I also spoke to a man, he's 25 years old, he lives in Atlanta and does social media for an ad agency. He used to fly from Atlanta to Nashville, but in late May, he heard about Whalen, the luxury bus service, from a friend, and just decided to take that instead to save some money and save himself from the airport hassle. And he liked it so much that he took it round trip 3 weeks in a row. He said he liked just being able to show up 5 minutes before departure, hopping on the bus, and he just didn't have to deal with kind of going through security or waiting on long lines and kind of those other hassles that are associated with airport travel. So overall, it is a mixed bag, and your experience on the bus will certainly depend on what line you take and where you're going.
That's Wall Street Journal reporter Ethan Steinberg. And that's it for your Money Briefing this week. Our producer is Ariana Osperu. Our supervising producer is Melanie Roy. And our executive producer is Chris Zinsley. I'm your host, J.R. Whalen. Thanks for listening, and have a great weekend.